Welcome to one of the early Progressive Patriotism videos where I talk to someone about a certain topic about something Australian that we should be doing or we could be doing or what we're doing right or whatever, right? Whatever it is. So fun, lucky me. Our first little discussion here with Jesse Fleay, very knowledgeable man, very passionate about a republic for Australia. Something makes us independent. We talk about it in the conversation. So if you can see here, we have these beautiful microphones in front of us, but my audio mixer didn't actually record anything on the day. It created a file for the audio files to go into, but there was no audio at all. But the mixer said there was, but there isn't. So be patient, be kind, be loving for the audio quality, because there's a beautiful conversation there. These microphones are merely decorative, as you can see, just decorative. Nothing. So enjoy. Thank you, Jesse Fleay, for your time.
Hello. Welcome to the one of the first episodes or conversations that we'll have on a to-be-determined name of a new channel or movement or blah, 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 who knows. So, but more importantly, the first topic we're going to be talking about is an Australian republic. I'm here with Jesse Fleay. Introduce yourself, I guess, better than I can.
Oh, I don't know about that.
In your own words.
I've had the opportunity to speak to you a few times now. My name is Jesse Fleay for all your listeners, and I'm a Noongar man from Western Australia. But I live here in Bolwyn, and I've just joined the Victoria branch of the Labor Party. Mm-hmm. And beyond that, beyond politics, I'm looking to support an Australian Republic model being developed by the Australian people that suits us as a civic movement rather than an ornamental idea of a republic.
Yeah, or a cut and paste from other countries.
Yeah,
or something
exactly.
else.
Yeah, the ideology is just tiresome for Australians and they want to see some bipartisanship on this. There is, which is the good news. There's a lot of supporters of a republic in the current parliament across the parties. I would say that the majority of people who are elected in this current parliament support in principle a republic and Australia's independence.
Yeah.
They may have different views about how that should work, but let's look at the facts of democracies. The people need to lead their democracy if it's to succeed. When you have too much order and too much interference in people's lives, too much domination.
Whether it be a foreign head of state or corporate interests. Or
I guess it's not even really about the Crown in the Australian Republic debate because they don't play an active role. They're ceremonially linked to us, but in lieu of that, we have something appointed rather than elected. And it's in the obscurity that system creates for Australia and Australian law, Australian democracy, that creates that gap where there's no elected representative executive role. The Prime Minister has a very limited executive power in the Constitution.
I guess, is there a detriment though? Like, is there a problem if we do give too much power to certain people?
Absolutely.
In the country?
Absolutely. And people can mess that up as well. And we shouldn't look to Ireland or the United States for our model because it needs to be developed and tailored by Australians and based on what we will agree to as a social contract.
Yeah.
I don't see many problems with the Irish model, but we need our own model. And it's great to include Ireland among our allies. It's also great to include the United States and the United Kingdom among our allies.
When they are acting up.
But there are millions of people who live in those countries who are good people.
Yeah.
And they're being let down by their government and their inability to execute a constitution that is antiquated.
Yeah, okay.
It was conceived based on Enlightenment values by a group of people who may have been intelligent men.
Especially at the time.
At the time, but they could never have predicted the world we're living in.
Yeah.
They were not prepared for it. They were not prepared for the ethics, for the climate change issues. They weren't prepared for economics on a scale that we are currently witnessing. Mm-hmm. They saw a world that needed to protect itself from an empire that kept trying to invade its sense of sovereignty. Mm-hmm. And they established what worked for the time, but they also created the ability to change it. And even in those changes, we've seen waves of different political ideology and other movements in history seek to subvert the will of the people rather than manifesting the will of the people in a proper civic republic.
In the US, for example.
Yeah, in the United States.
All right. Well, I guess I've got some questions because my brain goes fluffy. When we're recording, but so I guess what sparked your conviction that the Republic isn't just overdue, but it's urgent?
The first book I picked up at university when I waltzed through the library, feeling like I had the whole world at my fingertips.
Young Jesse.
Yeah, exactly. Right into the library. And for some reason, I picked up Paul Keating's essay on a republic, or his speech on a republic, which was published in book form, like everything from his administration. And I was convinced immediately. And then I found more books on the same topic. Mm-hmm. And for some reason, the idea of Australians reconciling and unifying by walking together and moving not away from our past, but moving into the future by acknowledging and healing our past is something that I feel like needs to happen. But I feel like the work I've done throughout my life and the things I've seen, the people I've spoken to, has made me realize that we need to start pushing for that now. Now is the time where we're fed up with the current system and the way that it treats the powerless, the way that it treats the vulnerable, and the way it currently does give too much power to people who are appointed by systems which are considered elite, I suppose.
All those who can afford it.
Yeah, all those who can afford to run for high office. All those who are convinced as well. All those who are handpicked for the roles that aren't elected in this country. And there are some great people in those roles. I mean, I met one recently. I had the opportunity to speak to the Vice-Regal in Tasmania. Her Excellency, the Governor there, invited my partner and myself to speak with her. And he
sent some photos. He looks sharp.
Oh, yeah. Well, she looked better as well. So which she looked amazing.
Yeah.
And she's got one of the most difficult Vice-Regal roles in Australia at the moment because of the fiasco with the election in Tasmania.
The old three-way split.
Exactly. But she's somebody who you can trust, and she's been a former judge, and she is somebody who should be in that role. But without trying to determine what some of the views are of some of our current, vice-regals, I would say that a lot of Australians who are educated today, who, when I say that, I mean people who have legal representation roles, people who have medical roles, they, on a day-to-day basis, see the real trauma of our country. And I feel like they would understand that we need to do something about it. What that is up to individuals. Yeah. But I feel like we have an answer with the Republic.
Okay. Just on those people, like the legal front people, or the medical staff, in a sense, they are on the front line of, some of the limitations or the gaps that are missing within our current system. Is that kind of what you mean?
I agree, yeah. I do think that. I do think that these people, teachers, doctors, nurses, they see the real trauma. They see the children who are clearly experiencing abuse at home. Yeah. They see the results on Aboriginal people in regional Australia who have no access to appropriate healthcare for simple conditions like diabetes, who can't get dialysis the same way. And they realise that the current system and the illusion of an empire which is dead as being this amazing thing that unites all of us has no reach to those people. Yeah. It has no reach to Aboriginal people. It has no reach to migrants. It has no reach to you and I. I mean, we were brought up in a country where we didn't have to stand for God Save the Queen or God Save the King at the beginning of every movie that was screened. But our parents did. My mother did. Yeah. And her parents did.
Anything before Advance Australia.
Yeah, and Advance Australia Affair has a very recent origin in our national story. So bit by bit, we've been stepping in the way of sovereignty and independence and a republic, bit by bit.
So now is that time.
Now's the time to just seal the deal. Yeah. With all of the conflict that's happening internationally, when are people going to put Australia first for Australians? We have a right to. We have a right to determine the way we live, which is a multicultural nation, which is fair treatment for all people under the same laws.
Irregardless of your background.
Irregardless of your background. Yeah. And we need to make sure that we maintain that. there are issues at play in our international regions around us. But just look at the world in general. We're so interconnected now with the way things are. But in our region alone, our oceanic region, we have a lot of conflict. And we have nations who depend on us as well. Not that we're encouraging dependency, but we do acknowledge that there are nations with strong economies who desire democratic change in their countries, who want to be good trading partners with us and who want to keep our region secure for everyone. Everyone can agree on having a fairer and more secure region where violent nations or violent movements within those nations don't get a look in.
Squash that those negative movements early. On that front of the, in a sense, like on the climate front for our Polynesian neighbours, and then also on like Southeast Asia where they're having some little coups here and there. If we sort of put Australia in a position to be kind of the new beacon in the region, is it?
I feel like
in a way, or is that
we've always been a beacon of peacekeeping.
Without that white saviour thing, that's
no,
what I meant more like.
We're not a white nation, so
no, we aren't.
And that's the other myth we have to burst. There are too many people who just assume that we've moved on from white Australia policy just because it's no longer policy. It was only in 1975 that we really managed to disrupt that worldview, and before that. Australia has existed under white Australia policy for longer than it has out of it.
I think was it kind of a policy before
since 1901. Well? I guess it was an unspoken policy. And like different state governments, if you want to call them that, before Federation had their own approaches. But as a Commonwealth policy that was enacted in the first Parliament, white Australia policy.
First sitting week.
First sitting week, white Australia policy. And Labor and the Liberals both supported it at the time. So the union movement supported it.
Well, because it had that angle of protecting workers' rights, blah, blah, blah.
It's important to bust that myth that it was just some sort of conservative old world view that we've buried. It was a very popular movement among Australians at that time, and it was wrong. And we know that now. And anyone who disagrees with that can't call themselves Australian. They can't count themselves as among civilized Australians to have that view. And we know that now. And we've moved on from that. The sensible, broader majority of Australians know that your worth is determined by how you treat other people, not the colour of your skin or anything else.
Is that something we would have had to learn over time? Because like at the time, that probably would have been people do the easiest thing, right? So it's, get rid of all these Asians that are stealing our jobs.
I feel like
at the time that would have been an easy option for them to think.
I feel like it was just fear of a common enemy. You can see the same thing in Japan as well, in Imperial Japan, with the threat to Australia during that conflict, and after the war, there was never an ease with Asia for a long time. Australians weren't at ease with Asia.
I think it spiked up that spiciness.
Exactly, but that respect changed, and it was actually the Fraser government who had a mass migration strategy for Asians to Australia, and here we are. We're so much better off. So much better off. I have great family and friends. I myself have. Sorry, you're just being incredibly loud.
That's all right, neighbours. So what I'm getting at is more of like, at the time it would have been a thing. They would have thought that was the right thing, and in hindsight, no, obviously not, because it doesn't benefit anyone too much. Because anyway, what I'm getting at is like, does that show there's this level of maturity or growth or evolution that this country can have?
This country has always been growing, and I think that's one of our better principles. I love Australia, and I love being Australian because everything about our history is us having to respond and step up. Like we've had 2 world wars in this country, and we've stood up. We've stood up for our rights. We've stood up for the rights of other people in the world, and I'm proud of that. And I feel like, why shouldn't we capture that and make that our constitutional identity, that we're a united country, we care about the values of the contemporary world, but we also value the tradition, and the tradition for Australia is our Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander history. There's no Indigenous history and Indigenous issues and then Australian history and Australian issues. Indigenous history is our history. It's part of our broader history. And for a long time, there's been this isolationism as if it's a topic of study, that's perpendicular to the rest of mainstream Australia. And I feel like we're moving into a space now where we can finally disrupt that wall that some of our ancestors have created. And understanding the value of that culture, it's perfect for our country because it's so old and it's so historic and it's so diverse by nature that it shows us a better way to live. It shows us that anybody can be an Australian, whatever language you speak, whatever part of the world you come from. Australia itself is like a mini world. We have so many different regions and so many different languages in our Indigenous history that it's a celebration of diversity.
Yeah, this petri dish of
So if you can have our tradition as pluralism and our future as pluralism, then you win.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. All right. Yeah. See, fluff brain.
Yeah.
On the so what we'll do, I guess, so some aspects of why the system is broken, we'll explore into that, of why referendum now. Actually, on that point of where you said it's like we step up, inherently it feels inherently that's like a reactionary thing that this country does, right?
Like, so I'm sure we have done it in a reactive way sometimes too, which is not worth celebrating.
Yeah, so like maybe that's a problem, like something that Australia does is that we're kind of, there is a little bit of a history of reactionary.
Of course there is.
Some things.
Yeah.
And that's why we, make changes.
We've stepped on it though.
But
we've always managed to step on the reactive approaches.
Yeah. But on this front, with a referendum, is this more of a taking charge?
Yeah, of course.
Acting first, not as a reaction.
Not acting rashly, but acting based on a calling. And I feel like Australians are good at answering the call internationally for peace and for stability and security. We are not a nation that has a history of going to war with people for no reason. We don't create disputes, we resolve disputes. We resolve disputes in our country, on the whole, historically, and we also resolve them internationally, and people love
a regional mediator.
Yeah, exactly.
Was it ASIO or not ASIO? ASIC or something? Asia.
Oh, you're talking about ASEAN.
Yeah, ASEAN, we helped pioneer and put that together.
Yeah, exactly.
With our Asian neighbours.
And those countries and their economies have exploded from that opportunity and more. Like Thailand is one of the richest economies on earth. Yeah. And it's one of the richest economies in Asia. And they have long stood by us as a strategic defence partner as well. We've experienced similar issues with the Second World War, and we've also experienced similar issues with imperialism at different times in our nation's histories in different ways. But, Thailand is a monarchy, and Australia is also a monarchy currently. But Thailand is a very different monarchy because we wouldn't be able to sit here having this conversation in Thailand, but we can sit here in Australia and have it. I can make a representation to the Crown of this country and they treat me with respect. Yeah. So
that just reminds me of that Scott Morrison quote.
That
really awkward one. Yeah. Not far from here, you could get shot for having these discussions. That's not
don't compare me to him. But
no, I'm not saying that's not what I was getting at. Reminds like that whole point of Thailand, we couldn't have these conversations.
But it's interesting you mention him because he's a good reason why we need to become a republic.
Which is what I was using as a segue.
There you go.
The next question that I got is just like, what does the Whitlam dismissal and the Morrison secret ministries have in common, and why are they more than just historical quirks?
They're very well connected because they do the same thing but in different ways.
They highlight.
Yeah, they're both issues that highlight the breach of the current constitutional power. So with the Whitlam dismissal, that is universally, maybe apart from Sky News and other journalists, that is universally seen as a negative part of our Australian history and a stain on our legal history and our democratic history. That was a Governor-General abusing the power that they had. They only have notional ceremonial power, but our Governor-General at the time breached that power and chose to dismiss an elected leader through a role by which he himself was appointed to by that elected leader to represent the Crown.
To be able to fire your own boss.
Yeah, and you're meant to be representing impartiality, and you go and do a thing like that. The second time was an elected leader totally overstepping their roles as an elected leader, and it put our Governor-General in a difficult crisis position because he's supposed to just agree and sign off on it. That's his role.
So he kind of overdid his job.
And if he had any questions about it, he couldn't say anything. And if he did, he would have been creating another kind of constitutional crisis.
Yeah.
So there's too many gaps in our current system, and there's too many opportunities for people to exploit it. And we don't want that anymore. We want a system that is straightforward, that tells us what our power is, that tells the limited and defined terms of what leadership should be in this country, so that each of us as individuals have power over that leadership.
Yeah, okay. Have a nice, clear constitution that people can bark about.
With accountability, transparency, and meaning. There's no real symbolic or ceremonial meaning in our constitution besides the sovereignty of the crown over everyone else. It doesn't talk about Australian rights. It doesn't talk about...
Yeah. It's mainly just a big book about states' rights.
Exactly. It's boring.
Yeah, there shall be no taxes across borders except WA. That sort of thing.
Yeah, WA came to it a little later.
Yeah.
But I mean, you read the constitutional experts and they'll all say, it's boring. What is your thought? What is your main thought on the Constitution? It's boring.
It's not inspiring. It's not. No one's marching the streets complaining about it.
No. And that's a good thing as well.
Preaching about it, sorry.
That's not a bad thing. On the whole, 80% of it is effective.
Yeah.
It was written at a much later time than the US Constitution. It makes more economic and administrative sense, our constitution, but it just lacks the bare bones.
Lacks the people front.
It lacks the heart as well. Yeah. It lacks the bones and heart. It's just a rolling piece of flesh and muscle of states and their prerogatives,
their economic stability.
Yeah.
So I guess a constitution that has less loopholes for certain PMs to take advantage of.
Unquestionably. We need to make sure that there are no trick opportunities for politicians to pull on the Australian people through our constitutional law. I mean, politicians will always do that in other ways, through legislation, through policy, through representations to the media and to other people. But if our constitution can demand certain rights for Australians and certain standards, I mean, look at the medical profession. It has unquestionable standards that if they're breached, there's a consequence. Look at our schools and our education as well. We have very similar important standards that we cannot breach. But our politicians, the rule doesn't quite apply the same way. It certainly applies for breaching, ministerial roles and breaching offices of the Crown, etc. But in local government, you're not a Crown Minister, so you can't be held to account the same way a state or a federal MP can. And local government is a whole other issue because it's not constitutional. It is in that it's established through legislation which is constitutional, but there's no constitutional backing for local government. And in certain states and territories, like in Western Australia where I'm from, it's not compulsory to vote for local government. I believe it is here, but it isn't in Western Australia, and that creates issues. The voter turnout for local government is something like 15% sometimes in certain shires, and they still have shires and some cities, etc.
So that's sort of
it's not representative.
That sort of brings in more of those extremist people who actually put the effort in.
It brings in some interesting people. It brings in some fantastic people as well, some passionate, driven people. But it also brings in the fringes. It brings in the people who aren't ordinarily heard by other governments. People who are COVID skeptics. People who are anti-vaxxers. People with incredibly strange views about nationalism
which sounds funny to do that on a local level. Because it's like they've got these big grandiose ideas of what the state should be doing, what the federal should be doing.
It's good for them, unfortunately, because that appeal to the grassroots, which the current Republic movement hasn't been able to maintain, is what makes those movements powerful. And they do get senators now, and they do get local government officials. And
because it's been like a trial.
Yeah.
So you did well in the city council. Right, let's put you in the Senate, that sort of thing.
Yeah, exactly. And if you look at the phenomenon of this in the United States, I won't mention any names, but if somebody has power that is given to them despite the repellent nature of their personality, which, personality used to matter, it's the movement itself and the policies that people think are good for them. And they're populist policies. They're Like, I mean, the giveaway in populism is how close it sounds to popular. They're often ideas that are very popular
at the time,
mixed in with a whole heap of negative rubbish as well, toxic ideas. And not everyone who supports them is always a prejudiced person, but they can't help but feel the appeal of the other side of the argument that they're infusing into their matters to them.
Mm-hmm.
So you bring up nationalism, you make it look as though you're the most patriotic person in the country, that what you're calling for is protecting your country. I don't feel like...
There's not too many people that would disagree with that.
Yeah.
But then when that's all grouped in with...
Exactly.
Yeah.
Of course I want to protect my country. Of course I want to protect my community from what I see as a threat. But the threats that they create distract from the real threats that are there.
Mm-hmm.
And often the real threats are in our own country and in the way that people want to make our government work less efficiently, maybe more efficiently in their worldview. But
Okay.
These are bigger issues, right?
Damn. All right, another episode. We'll have to come back. Another episode. So I guess on that, with the referendum talk of the Republic, haven't we had one before? You know?
Oh, of course.
How did that go? Why didn't we have another one? Why should we put the effort in?
was unequivocally set up to fail.
Mm-hmm.
It's well known, well established that the Prime Minister at the time, John Howard, did not support a republic. He didn't want one to happen.
Mm-hmm.
And the opportunity was in his hands. And so he cast a referendum with a rubbish question.
Mm.
And you can look at the statistics, you can look into the polling. There's lots of literature published about the referendum. We've studied it, very rarely, unfortunately. But we do see the universal story is people who wanted a republic voted no because they didn't like the question. They didn't like the model and they didn't think there was enough clarity in the question. Why would anyone vote for a change that just put the same thing in with a different name? You know, like, it's like you're unhappy at work. Yeah, exactly. You're unhappy at work and you're unhappy with the leadership style of somebody. Somebody else comes along and just does the same thing, but they look different or they're a different person. You're just going to be equally unhappy, right?
Yeah.
And that's what that system is. That system is taking the current crown structure and replacing it with something else appointed. Or ultimately, keeping the appointment system from that crown structure and just flicking the piece of jewellery off the top.
Yeah.
And it doesn't... how is that meant to build a movement of change and togetherness and inclusion? Why can't we be given the respect to elect somebody for ourselves?
Mm-hmm.
And why are there so many people in power who lead this debate in the public space who disrespect Australians so much that they don't think we should have a right to vote for who we want to lead our country? And, you know, like, give us a break. They tell us it's because we're going to be too like America, or that American system will just be carbon copied here. Or, like, the more reactive say that we're going to become like a socialist Soviet republic or whatever, you know, because of the word republic being used in so many different types of government.
Yeah.
Australian values, Australian republic. If they can't trust the Australian people to put that right, then they shouldn't be in the office that they serve.
Yeah, okay. So what is the sales pitch compared to, you know, like back then it was, you know, left vague, but it's the same thing, but just a different name. So what would be the sales pitch for today's modern thing? And I understand that it's created by the people, and that it will be created by the people. So the argument I have is that we're not even ready to have a referendum yet. Not another one, not after the last two. We need to get the Australian people together in different forums in different ways and let them have the debates, the discussions, the civics education required for understanding our constitution. There are very few Australians who have read the Constitution or understand it, or really know much about it. But there's so many people who are willing to say they'll get up and defend it against these attacks on its changes. You know, in the more like extreme spheres out there. It doesn't tell us to defend it. It has a high court judiciary to do that. It's not the same as an American Constitution, and I think a lot of reactives sometimes make the mistake or seek to establish the mistake that the Australian Constitution is very much like the American Constitution. Yeah, there's this conflation of the two. It's not.
Yeah, there's no Bill of Rights, there's no Declaration of Independence, nothing. There's just, like I said, the muscle and the flesh of government, you know, wobbling about with no structural authority and no heart. as well. It's missing the heart. It's missing the common humanity and the care that unites us.
Yeah. It's just a how to run government handbook.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah, exactly.
So on that timeline of front of things, is it more like we have to try and get together these people, or who's going to pay for it, or is it to be paid for, or is it meant to be led by a grassroots movement and then they come to the government with it?
I feel
sign
like
petitions, like we got a million petitions on the website.
I feel like it just needs to start with the grassroots, and then we can answer those questions when we get more support for it. Ultimately, if we get more and more people in different communities calling for this in different ways, petitioning their local members, going to community events and talking about it, having good old classic debates in local town halls. We don't have that anymore unless it's politician-led. We need to have more of that.
Of the actual community members.
And we need to educate our children in primary and secondary on the different choices and the different perspectives of this. Yes, they need to learn about the monarchy. Yes, they need to learn about the republic. Yes, they need to learn about what constitutional changes we've attempted to enact, why there's still a push for some of them, why some people disagree with them. Having a proper, neutral civic education on that, so that young people can make up their own mind. And on that, younger people, statistically, are polling to support a republic more than ever. The younger the voting basis is, the more that they have no association with the crown.
Yeah.
They have a respect for the monarchy, they like the celebrity element of it. I'm sure a lot of people have seen The Crown.
Fucking love that show.
Yeah,
So
and you can't really, couldn't put the previous queen down, could you?
No.
Good human being.
Yeah. But it's more, you watch it as like a historical drama.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And
a political drama. It's got so much more happening in there as well.
And it's like, this is a part of our history, but it's not. But it's over there. But it's not something to... I lost my point. But
I think the show is very critical of the system of monarchy.
Yeah,
it shows the weaknesses and vulnerabilities.
Yeah.
And some people weren't happy with it being made. But
because it was too insulting.
Too
real about what actually goes on.
But that's the nature of life, and that's the nature of power. On this as well, I don't for a moment want people to think that what I'm proposing is a magic silver bullet to all of our problems. Nothing can be. There's no such thing as an ideal state, but there is the push for justice. And when people are pushing for justice within their system, they can make sure that injustices, wherever it does and will occur, is held to account and is demonstrated as something we don't want to happen again.
Yeah, okay. So it's more of a setting ourselves up to be in a better position to avoid things slipping through the cracks, or having better reinforcement for, as we said before, the people
done
on the
it in many
front,
ways.
the hospital front.
Yeah, like what you're talking about we've done. So we passed the Australia Act. The British, exactly. The British Parliament can't legislate for us anymore. We established a High Court instead of the Privy Council. So now we have a proper functioning High Court judiciary, which has delivered amazing outcomes for Australians in its time, and it has a lot of respect and commands a lot of respect. We have a Parliament, we have a Senate, right? Our executive has question marks. We don't vote for our leader. We don't vote for the leader of Australia. We vote for our local constituent member, and that's all we have, unless we're a member of a party that does vote for its members. Unless we're, unless all of the parties decided to get together now and decide that they're all going to have their membership vote for their leader. Only the Australian Labor Party does that. I have hope that will be a universal practice in the future for all political parties. It's a standard.
Prime Minister or the leader of the party.
Yeah, but then at the same time, you can choose who your leader is for your party or your movement, but Australians should be able to vote for their executive leader, whether they're called president, whether they're called mate, I don't know, whatever role that title is, it needs
Commander
to be
mate.
elected, chief mate of the Northern Territory, chief mate of Western Australia.
Chief mate to start. But so, in a sense, more of like, on that front, like a popular, not first past the post, but preferential system, of course, or something.
Oh, yeah.
That's something very uniquely Australian.
You got to keep that. I think that people haven't figured that one out in some other countries, and it's caused mayhem. I feel like it also encourages agreement of some kind between parties. So we're always going to be at each other. in Australia, our political parties, independents, they're always going to be at each other because at the end of the day, that's what that system is for. It's to compete for ideas and to represent Australians in different ways. Different Australians vote for different people to represent different aspects of themselves.
Because this country is very diverse.
Of course. And it's a celebration, you know, like people think that argument or disagreement is a negative thing. It's a very healthy thing and it can be done with respect. And you and I were talking earlier about how where we are now, Whitlam and Menzies also lived here.
Yeah.
And throughout their whole life, they got along and treated each other with respect.
Yeah.
So where are those times? You know, like you don't see a lot of that anymore from our major leaders. Not for the past few years.
Yeah. That was, I think, we're in a very good position as a country to have that, or at least lead that format of discussions.
Yeah.
I have a friend in the US, and I send her like, oh, this is what the project I'm doing with the other thing, Bridge by Words, and she was blown away by how just calm it was to talk about politics.
Yeah,
I know that thing isn't policy driven, but it's still a conversation with a politician, and it's not getting heated.
No,
it's not about this guy F them,
and nor should it. If somebody really believes what they stand for, they should feel comfortable to share it. They should, I'm happy for you to criticize my ideas. I want them to be criticized.
Yeah.
If you've got a better idea than mine, then I would love, in theory, if you had a different idea from me, I would love to see you stand for it and represent it. And then maybe my perspective changes and maybe your perspective changes.
Yeah.
Or maybe none of our perspectives change and we can walk away and agree to disagree.
Like, I don't know, being silly, a part of me is like, oh, what if, we do the Swiss model and it's just, we all trade around premiers, keep the states' rights thing.
Smorgasbord.
That's traditional. Yeah. But then, rotate the position between premiers and then somehow, I don't know, that'd be chaotic.
Yeah, I reckon
we're
going to keep it simple too.
Yeah.
That's the true value of having an Australian model is it's going to be more simple. It's going to be more straightforward and people will know where they stand, what their rights are as a representative leader and what they don't have a right to do to Australians and what the consequences are if they do it wrong.
Yeah. I think you already answered it, but, why a directly elected model?
Yeah, because of the transparency and accountability. Because this is a perspective I have, and I'm sure a lot of people would agree with it, that for someone to govern us, they need our consent. We vote for who our representatives are. We already get that right in so many other elements. We don't consent as Australians to our crown. The crown just exists through supreme law. We don't get a choice in that. Our constitutional founders in 1901 had that choice, but I just told you about their views at the time. 1901, people supported white Australia policy. People feared Asia. People didn't know about diversity. They had no care to include Aboriginal people into the constitution. There were some great people who were alive then, but that architecture of that 1901 constitution failed to unify Australia and it failed to make Australia unique or independent in its region.
Yeah. With today's lens, it's definitely a failure. And at the time, there was voices and there were people that were for, including everyone.
It may not have been a failure in and of itself as a constitution, but it failed to do too many important things right.
Yeah.
Even for its time.
It feels, at least from my point of view, it feels like all right, we just need to get everyone to agree. It was a giant compromise. And I guarantee there would have been different states that would have had different views or takes on it.
Oh, yeah.
For example, we've left room for New Zealand if they want to join. Or, it wasn't Western Australia's idea to join until last minute, and they had to just be added at the end.
And of course, if you look through the debates, you'll see that Sir Henry Parkes, who's often spoken about a lot as being almost a quiet Republican at the time, wasn't happy with the way Aboriginal people were being treated and wasn't so happy with the Crown system. He reluctantly accepted at the end of the day.
He had to compromise.
Yeah, he had to compromise. But
to get anything across the board.
But what he says and what he hopes for Australia is definitely worth reading in the Australasian Federation debates.
Yeah, Henry Parkes.
Yeah.
Yeah, write it down, kids.
Yeah.
I might do a video or something at some point. That'd be good. So at the time, it just feels like this compromise that had to be done.
Yeah.
And I do think, and especially, getting messages across the country.
We don't have to compromise anymore, though.
No.
That's the thing.
So
they did.
They
were part of an empire.
With any democracy, there is a level of compromise that has to be done.
Yeah.
Otherwise, nothing gets done and things get blocked in the Senate or whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
But I guess more on the front of we're better connected now to have these discussions, and grassroots don't just have to be limited to the grassroots.
No.
You can talk about this topic and have shared values from someone in Victoria, or a group of people in Victoria and New South Wales and all these other different states, and they could come together and build a unified message and bring that forward.
And they can be from
idea.
every party or non-party. They can be from every sector of society if they agree that we need to directly elect our leader. And that's all there is to it, really. We can have discussions about how we want to shape that. But for now, in the discussion now, we just want to say that we want a republic. Now, even Bob Katter supports a republic.
Yeah.
There are people in the Liberal Party, the National Party who I've met, and also the Labor Party, obviously, the Greens. There are many independents who support a republic.
Yeah.
And on the whole, there are Australians who know that the current system isn't going to exist forever. Nothing lasts forever, right? Hate to break it to you, but nothing in this world is permanent. Monarchy is not permanent for the UK. It may be there for another 100 years. Who knows?
Yeah.
Who knows these things?
It feels like it's on its way
not
out.
permanent.
Yeah.
And a system that is more reflective of non-permanence and that is more reflective of the cycles of life in the world is going to be more honed to the situation.
Yeah. Able to steer through things a bit better. Yeah.
Terms of government exist for a reason, and we have it so close to being right. It's just that we have this last thing tying us to a past system where power is inherited, or power is just completely eternal in this world through a system, and it's not. It's not permanent. If we ever have the opportunity to have any power, then we need to respect the parameters by which we even are allowed to wield it, and we have a limited time to do something with it. No leader in the modern world has a very long time in government, unless it's a totalitarian state.
Bringing up Keating, it's just, one of his quotes is just like, you haven't got a minute to waste.
No, of course not. He knew that, and you know what, Malcolm Fraser did too, and people from the other side of politics have always known that too. And I spoke about Menzies before. Menzies served for a very long time in this country, and then he came back again. So he obviously had some appeal to people. But I didn't see many extremist views from Menzies. I saw he was a monarchist.
Yeah.
He had that common care and respect and stood up for Australians, especially when he was abroad in the UK. And if you read his biographies, he didn't always have the best relationship in trying to demand what was best for Australia. He talks about having opened up one of the letters that was for the Australian ambassador in Australia House in the UK, and it had apparently gone to the Indian ambassador first, an ambassador from 2 other countries, had stains all over it, and then it was just thrown on Australia's desk.
Wow. All right. So, that's the price for being on the corner of the world, I guess. It'll get to you eventually, mate.
Surely we've moved on from that.
Yeah, especially with the interwebs and all that. So I guess I do want to ask, where is it? Movement politics, you describe a future built by trade unionists, teachers, rural voters, First Nation leaders, suburban mums, etc., 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 etc. Why do movements matter more than machinery?
Because here we are as people, and if we get it right, we acknowledge that we are just people at the end of the day, and that sense of community and belonging is the only thing that's worth having. We're here for a limited time. We want to live our lives in happiness. So we can do that together as a community. And if we're not serving that in our systems, if we're not serving the prosperity, the joy of living in a community, and dealing with the conflicts and the issues that come with it, and the heartache, and look at this country with natural disasters and the leadership we demand at those times.
They come together in those
We
moments.
don't always get the leadership in those times, but we need to make sure that the community comes first at the best of times and the worst of times.
Yeah.
And I feel like that is the appeal of this. It does apply to every Australian, and it gives hope to every Australian that one day they could lead their country, or their children could lead this country. Not everyone's going to. There's only going to be one person, right?
Yeah. But not even just leading the country as a whole, but just representing your community.
That
something I've learned from interviewing.
Yeah, exactly.
This country is so uniquely put in place where it's, first generation migrants, second, their kids.
Yeah.
They can still run for office, and represent their community. So why not extrapolate that as a part of the referendum?
Let it be a point of learning. Exactly like you're saying. We're learning this as we go.
Yeah.
Because it's a new idea. For Australia, it's a new idea.
Yeah.
It hasn't... Like, I've done my thesis on a republic for my PhD. And in the whole time that I've studied it, I learned that nobody in Australian history had ever written a model for a republic as a topic of our university education history.
To talk about? Or...
No, because back then it was treason to talk about it for a specific period of time. So we're talking, colonial period when universities came here, or you would have just been cast out of the circles that gave you the funding for your research, because it was all led by the monarchy and its systems. Vice-chancellors were often either royal family members or lords or knights of the realm, like our governors and governors-general were for a while. So there's been a huge disdain against that kind of topic being explored. And then there was the social stigma of it, or the visibility of it as being a non-necessary issue.
Yeah.
Even though
it's not broken, why fix it?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Okay. And I mean, that's not the normal rhetoric you're supposed to hear in an academy, right?
Yeah.
You're meant to challenge the current system and have the opportunity to question it.
Yeah. It's meant to be the place of thinkers.
If it's strong enough to stand, it'll stand the questions.
Challenge, discuss ideas.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Okay. Was it the battleground of ideologies?
But the monarchy hasn't stood that test for Australia for me. The monarchy.
No one's had that proper discussion.
Yeah, no one's had the proper discussion. It always comes back to this grievance against Britain and against the monarchy, etc., etc.
Yeah.
It's not about them. No. For Australia, it's about us and how we're going to choose to govern our country. They're our ally. They always will be. They're certainly good at stamping down incredibly extremist views in that country. I'm proud of that. I'm proud of having that friendship long through history.
Yeah.
But I think they know that we need to have our own independence in our region.
I said to you, it's the kid that never moves out. It's like, get out of here.
Yeah, we don't want to be that.
Still,
We don't want to be that.
I guess on that front, I think maybe mini marketing session.
Yeah.
Not to sell the idea, but bring people along.
Yeah.
If it didn't have that inherent message that it's always seemed to have had of the crown is old, get on, get rid of it. But so I guess the first thing you want to do to sell this or convince people or get people on board is more. It's not about getting rid of the old; it's about embracing the new.
Yeah, it's about giving people a voice in their own society.
Yeah. It's got nothing to do with the crown.
It has nothing to do with the crown. No. Yeah. I mean, it does in
legal
the effect
blah
that,
blah blah.
It's there symbolically, and the presence of its symbolism in our constitution just doesn't make sense. And it's what's missing from our constitution. It's not about what we need to take out of it so much as it is about what we need to put into it, and that's proper executive accountability. When a leader is directly elected, they can be by the people. They can be directly challenged and impeached if they commit to any wrongdoing. And if we get to define those terms. Look around right now at all the countries that exist and all the ones where citizens are living in conflict daily. What would they give to have the power and the opportunity to change their nation state, to change their constitution? We've got so much opportunity in this country, it almost feels like we don't need to, but that's exactly why we need to. We need to make sure that is safeguarded for coming generations. I care about what children of tomorrow inherit.
Yeah.
Everything I do today is for that.
Yeah.
Not everyone may have that mindset, but I'm pretty sure a lot of Australians do.
I think a lot of
parents
and
grandparents agree with that.
Yeah.
I don't have children of my own, but I'm here to make sure that the country is better for everyone's children. I have the opportunity. I was born in this country. I didn't choose to be born in this country. I have the privilege of living here, even as a citizen. Whether you choose to come here or whether you were born here, it's a privilege what we have here.
Yeah.
I want to make sure that that continues for lots of people.
Yeah. I am, you are, we are all
Yeah.
Australian.
Exactly.
Yeah.
See, musicians always get it right.
So I think we've already answered it, but it's what's getting in the way of becoming this conversation? What is getting in the way of this becoming an actual national
This
conversation?
is where the controversy is. The monarchists aren't getting in the way. In this country, the monarchists, let them have let them have the space that they have. No one's listening to them.
Yeah, okay.
The majority of Australians don't care what David Flynn has to say. But the problem is Republicans are getting in the way of themselves. No one cares what the Republicans have to say either. No one's engaging with this debate because they have failed to frame the debate in the way that it should be. They've failed to produce a directly important model. And in absence of that, they've failed to engage with the Australian people to make sure that model represents what people want. We're not having the conversation we need to have, and we need to start having it. And that's been my frustration for years now. I get people tell me they anecdotally support a Republican. I'm like, okay, so what are we going to do about it? I need you to step up. I need the brave. I said in that speech that what we need is the brave to come together to stand up for all Australians and make sure that our way of life in our region is kept the way it is. It's kept good for us and for our children.
Yeah. So it's ourselves.
Yeah.
Tripping on ourselves.
We all need to take a good look at ourselves.
Yeah. But it's getting enough people on side to have the conversation to identify what it should be.
I think there's people out there.
I think from what I'm gathering, it's you want this, but you don't want to be the one who is, again, probably an appointed, the one answerable or the one who has to come up with all of the concepts. Because it is meant to be for the people. I'm not saying it's like a...
What I want is for people to come together. There are plenty of people out there who do support this and they're just waiting for the right moment. I want people to come together because they're called to do it. We need to have that moment. We haven't had that moment yet. We need to find a way to really push for a republic and show people why they need to do it. And I don't know how that looks yet myself, but I want to bring together people to think about this differently now after like 35, I haven't led this. I'm only coming into it after being interested for the past few years and trying to be involved. I look back at 30 years, that's almost my entire life. Nothing's changed. No one's changed the model. No one, the current model they have is just a rehash of the last model. It's an appointed leader again. Give us a break. That's the problem now. The fact that someone's appointed and handpicked.
Yeah.
We're all sick of that at work.
Yeah.
We all hate that when that happens at work, but our constitution tells us that system is right. Yeah. Our constitution tells us that wealth and power and leadership are inherited. And we wonder why we're looking at the issues we're looking at now in our corporations.
Who have the power to appoint it.
Yeah, and have the power to appoint their children and their children's children when it should be based on merit and the hardest working person in the organisation.
Okay. Elected by the people.
Yeah. We have organisations now that vote for their head of board as well.
Yeah, okay.
So if we can get that right in our corporate setting as well, then why can't we do it in our country? You know how it's problematic for someone to be on 18 boards of different companies, right? Our head of state is like a board leader of about 52 nations, I think it is. I've lost count. There are a lot that still have the Crown representative. So who does His Majesty support when it's cricket time? Does he support Australia? Does he support the UK? I think we all know the answer.
I think he would support UK.
Of course he has a right to.
Buckingham
He's
Palace
British.
would be stormed.
But that's the thing, he's meant to also, who supports our national team? Which head of state supports our national team? We don't have a president to support Australia. We have a president to support the UK. And for a long time, God bless them, they looked at their economy before they looked at ours for a long time. Australia was looking in on itself. Things were folding. We were approaching, recession after recession, and no one was representing our trade interests abroad. They were representing British trade interests abroad, and we were seen as their outpost. And the world around us still sees us as tied to the UK. There's some obvious reasons for that if you look at our symbolism.
Yeah.
We won't get into that debate. But we are seen as a British country in Asia. And we're an Asian country in an Asian region. And we need to accept that.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful thing. Our economy would be nothing if it weren't for our trading with our region, and the development we've had and the migration and the skills that have been brought into what makes this fantastic country now.
The Prime Minister was just over there and he was saying that it's like 1/3 of all of our trade or all of our industries will rely on
with Asia,
Chinese Asian trade.
Yeah.
I think Asia as a whole probably be bigger, but China,
of course,
because he was on the Great Wall. He was talking about it.
Of course.
Okay. So setting ourselves up to have better integration with our actual neighbours.
Yeah.
As opposed to,
or like I always used to say this, we're practicing what we preach.
Mm-hmm.
And that is where the gap is. We need to practice what we preach abroad. But at home, we need to preach what we practice as well.
Yeah.
So...
remove hypocrisy.
Yeah, remove the hypocrites.
Yeah. Okay. So we'll talk about it, bring it up. Unnecessarily touchy subject for some people. Where does First Nation sovereignty fit into all of this?
Oh, that, okay, yeah.
That's what I'm getting at.
I mean, touchy. I welcome you to my house, and what are you going to do? Throw something at me? That's where we're at. It's silly. It's just it's drummed up by nonsense. The majority of people support First Nations Australians. Mm-hmm. That's been evident for a long time. And you know what? I'll briefly mention the previous referendum because I was involved with that.
Mm-hmm.
I'll tell you the positive that I got from that. More First Nations Australians, like myself, were enrolled for the first time on the highest record of voting numbers to take part in that.
Yeah.
We never had that many First Nations people enrolled to vote.
Because this probably gave them this feeling of an opportunity to represent or have a say.
In many ways, it created more of a voice for First Nations people because now there's more of us voting in general elections.
Yep.
And we have Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander representatives in all the parties. Mm-hmm. And we've even had people run as independent as well.
Yeah.
So that is something to celebrate. What this means for our constitution is that we need to celebrate what unites us. We are all united in the fact that we are sharing land, histories with the oldest continuing cultures on this planet.
Yeah.
And that's something worth celebrating. And that there has overwhelmingly been a call from First Nations communities to walk with the rest of Australia, including that statement. And that hasn't changed. It hasn't changed even though it didn't pass.
Yeah.
The majority of us are still calling for walking together and reconciling our differences, through proper truth and justice.
Yeah.
How that ties into a republic, it does and it doesn't. A republic is for everyone. This question is about having a proper executive representative for everyone. We as First Nations people are in the Constitution and have been since the 67 referendum. But there's nothing wrong, and no one has ever disagreed with this before the voice referendum, that there's no reason we shouldn't have some form of acknowledgement or representation of Indigenous sovereignty and histories in our Constitution. Everyone across the board supported that for years. Mm-hmm. Even Howard supported that. Even Abbott, Turnbull, Bishop, people from across the Labor Party, the Liberal Party, the Greens, most people represented something being done there.
Yeah.
So if we can get back to that part of the argument for a republic, then it's just about including people around common values. And, some people are like, I don't want to get rid of the monarchy because I like tradition. We have tradition in this country, like I was saying, and we haven't had empires here. Yeah. We haven't had industrialization. So a lot of, people around the world have always seen Indigenous culture as behind or something like that. But look at what we got right. We had community first. We had families sitting around, working together on the land, keeping it well. And sure, we have evolved since then. We do all sorts of different things now. It's not to try and go back to the past. That's what we're criticizing through a monarchy.
Yeah.
We're trying to say, take the greater traditions and move forward and adapt, like Aboriginal people have had to do for 60,000 years on this continent and its islands adjacent.
Yeah.
And there are better parts of this monarchy system and its Westminster system that are working for us.
So we can keep them, like a high...
Exactly,
like
they're
form
working.
of a high court.
And I mean, the United States has kept those, and whether that's working out for them is a question for the United States. France's parliament system, they all formerly had monarchies, and they created these parliamentary systems. Sometimes they need to change and be adapted, and France has managed to do that. France has adapted its constitution a few times now. We have managed to live without massive civil wars in our country.
Yeah.
And I think that's worth celebrating too. We're not interested in violence in this country. We're interested in peace.
Yeah.
And I want to keep it that way.
Preach, sister.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I do like that incorporating... It's not... It's like when you... Atomic Habits, right? That book. We've probably read it. It's not completely removing a habit or something, but it's just replacing it with something that is more beneficial, or it can be more of a positive thing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like, all right, well, we've got the traditions of the crown, so we'll take a
In
little
this
like
case,
it.
it's just that it's more effective.
But then it's replacing it with more maybe the indigenous traditions that we have.
Sure.
And being more proud of that.
And I feel like there's
inclusive.
ways to do that. There's ways to do that. It could be done through the Constitution, or it could be a mandate of a government once we are a republic to put all of that right and have a proper treaty commission throughout the whole country, or however we want to do it. It has to be done too. Anyone who buries their head in the sand on that topic, and I will say this directly, anyone burying their head in the sand on Indigenous rights has no part of the debate.
Yeah.
And one of the biggest failings, even of the ABC during the referendum, was it was giving itself the perspective as a media agency that it was seeking impartiality.
It chooses when it wants to do that.
Exactly. And not every view that was being pushed then or now is worth listening to, because we're a better country than that.
Yeah. Coming together, not fighting, talking about things.
And this misinformation that we have to deal with now on a daily basis is quite exhausting.
Yeah.
It's exhausting for Australians. So I don't want this to become convoluted or complicated. I want it to be very clear, but I'm not going to back down on what I support and what my views are either.
Well, it's more like having this as the opportunity to actually reconcile and move forward together on this topic. Very contentious.
I think this is the only way we can truly reconcile.
Yeah.
It's the only way we can truly reconcile all of us, all Australians, with our past by solidifying what we want to be now. We get to choose who we are.
Yeah.
And then our future is a much brighter one when we've made that choice ourselves, instead of having the events of the world push us into a corner.
Yeah, okay. Because, as powerful and as beneficial they have been, the Red Gun, is it Redfern? Redfern speech?
Yeah, the Redfern speech.
Apology from Kevin Rudd.
There's also some great oratory from Indigenous leaders too.
I want
to show it because it
those,
just never really gets published. But you've got Lowicha O'Donoghue.
Yeah.
You've got the great freaking Noel Pearson. Recognised across the country, not seen as very partisan at all. Really, just very clearly well spoken and well educated. Speaks better than most of our elected officials. And then we've also had Stan Grant, who's one of my favourite journalists and one of my favourite writers.
Yeah.
I think Stan is one of the only few authors who can manage to live just off of what he publishes, and that's it.
Oh wow.
That's how good he is at writing, and that's how well received he is by his audience.
Great way to keep
if only we could all be like that. Yeah.
So all those people who are discussing and pushing for a reconciliation.
Yeah.
The referendum can be a good vessel for that.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
So a future referendum should really look at an executive change of power to our constitution, but it could include other things too. And so there's been talk about the length of terms of government in this country, and if we could solidify a 4-year term. And we all know that doing that would be seen as very popular because people don't like having to keep going to all these votes based on dissolutions and confidence, etc.
Yeah.
They want their government to do their job for a serious period of time.
Yeah. So they don't have to think about it every 3 years.
Yeah, and there's been what we've found is that the majority of Australians do want that 4-year term.
Yeah, okay.
So the people who have been polled and who are interested in the topic, of course, but they'd be great. It would be a great opportunity to test that as well while we're having this conversation about a republic, because there could be other changes that we don't think about. There's one in our constitution that absolutely needs to change, and that's that any race of people can be banned from voting in a general election. That's still in there. Still in it. No one would use it in their right mind, but I mean, not everyone in their right mind comes to power now. So we need to make sure that that is removed at some point. And that might be another question that we can include in a future referendum, because surely people of sense don't see sense in that being in our constitution. And it also helps us. It's symbolic in removing something like that, sure, because it shouldn't be used and it wouldn't be used. But getting rid of that shows who we are. It really gives us an opportunity to solidify what we truly believe and what we practice as a country.
Yeah, a progressive nation that can reinvent itself and...
or revitalize what's already working.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. Keeping the good habits.
Yeah.
Yeah. Implementing new ones.
Yeah, exactly.
So, closing sort of reflections and a question that we can ask and we'll wind down. If this republic does happen, what changes for the next generation of Australians? We've probably touched on it a bit throughout the whole thing, but just...
Well, I guess that's up to us, really. So what I see this as is making sure that power is more accountable, that it's more directly led by the people. In my view, that will make things way more closer to the Australian people in terms of decision making. So this will give everyday Australians more power in their public life.
Yeah.
It will probably also encourage more democracy because you're going to have presidential campaigns as well. But we need to define how those presidential campaigns work. Do we make sure that there's a funding stipulation that you can't spend over a certain amount? Do we say that we don't want any corporate sponsors of these people? That it has to be led, like it has to be led by the people in the community. We don't know yet. Let's let Australians decide that too. Let's bring it up and put it in the public space. But what it will mean is that there's proper executive power to deliver on issues where clarity can't be sought by the Parliament or the Senate, etc. Right now, our High Court judiciary does that. People who are appointed, it should really have to be their job. They're there for when a legal issue just can't be resolved. And that function is important, but should be rarely applied.
Yeah, okay, their full-time job should be interpreting the actual laws of the country, not the constitutional...
And providing finality on things we just can't resolve. It used to be the Crown's Privy Council, which were hand-picked people by the monarch, which doesn't make sense for Australia either, so we changed that already.
Yeah.
But we need an executive power who can make clear decisions when it really counts as well. And I really believe that's an overwhelmingly good thing. Of course, you can point to the systems in the world where someone's betraying that trust. But every single situation, that power hasn't been defined properly because of the time that it was created in, and it hasn't really progressed. And I mean, the United States is learning the hard way right now that it should have clearly defined things more, and it should have thought about how people might choose to redefine them in the future.
It's almost a case study as well of... it's not broken, don't change it. You know, how they love to hold that thing up like it's a Bible.
Yeah.
Their constitution, and I'm sure none of them have read it, but
It's
not criticising the US.
No,
but it's
not
like,
at all, yeah.
You know, the reason why they probably haven't changed it or haven't modified it for the modern times.
I feel like the best advice I ever had was that failure can teach us to lead better. And we have to be afraid of taking risks. Mm-hmm. So... the whole argument of, if it's not broken, don't change it. Where does that really come from? That really comes from, in my view, a decision to avoid failure or conflict. Mm-hmm. We have to put ourselves out there. We have to take risks. We have to do that in business. We have to do that in politics. We have to do that at war.
Everyday life.
Everyday life.
The bed is warm. I don't want to get out.
Exactly.
There's always this lull before the better thing happens.
So what this will really do is it'll give Australians more self-respect and more self-determination and personal accountability, and the realisation that they are the boss of the boss. Yeah. They're not subjects of the Crown anymore. They're the people in the big house.
The people in the big house work for us.
Exactly.
Yeah. And this is a better way to reframe it?
It's a better way to be the Australia all of our ancestors have dreamed of.
All of them.
All the good ones.
Yeah. No, I didn't mean that.
All the Australians.
I meant it more of
Because
like
I wanna-
a 60,000 years way. That's what I
of
meant.
course.
Not
But,
about
it's a great process, a great tradition.
Yeah.
But, you know, on that as well, albeit up front, there were people who considered themselves more British than Australian in our history. Because we didn't have a national identity. We was, you know, people considered their identity, their race and their nationality as British.
Yeah.
We're Australian. And we have British Australians, Irish Australians, Asian Australians, Indigenous Australians, but we're all Australian, and that means we need to agree on what it is that we all share.
Yeah.
And I don't think we've clearly defined that properly yet, at least through a constitutional framework or a social contract.
Okay, so the flowchart is define the common Australian fabric,
Yeah.
or fibre, then define what the Constitution, or what a referendum for a republic means
Yeah.
in light of that, and then we can define the model, or is that's like a playbook?
Yeah,
in a
I guess
sense?
so. But one way to look at it is that we all share common lands.
Yep.
We all have to be the custodians of them because we have no resources or food or climate if we don't do that. It's a scientific fact. It's spiritual for Indigenous people, but it's also a scientific fact. It can't be avoided by anyone anymore. Never should have been. So land has to come first. The land itself needs to be respected and has its own sovereignty from an Indigenous perspective. Lands, peoples, cultures. Our defence can defend lands, peoples and cultures. We as everyday Australians can defend our lands, other people and the diversity of our cultures. You know, our police, our laws, our courts are there to defend lands, peoples and cultures. It's so simple. But I feel like that's powerful. And I feel like it's way more powerful for Australia than a crown. You know, if you're serving the crown when you're fighting for Australia, that's fine. I don't have any doubt for any hero who has ever done that. But if we are supporting Australia's lands, peoples and cultures, I know that that's what they were also fighting for. I know that's what they're really fighting for, the freedom of other people at home. So we need to make sure that we encapsulate that.
Yeah.
We're not an empire anymore. We're not part of an empire. That empire is gone. It's disbanded itself. So let's get out of the terra nullius mindset and let's get into the mindset of what do we want for tomorrow? What do we want? We have a choice, you know, and we can live with joy if we choose to.
Yeah. Harmonious joy.
Well, maybe not always harmonious, but we can certainly live with a country where we celebrate what we have in common more, and we're not at each other's throats so much.
Yeah. All right. I like it. We'll wrap it up. Where do people find you or read more about what you've published or talked about or all of that stuff? Plug yourself, I guess.
I suppose you can find me at the National Centre for Reconciliation, Truth and Justice.
Yeah.
So if you go onto the website for the National Centre for Reconciliation, Truth and Justice, and I can give you a link.
We'll put
It'll give you a bit more information about what I do there.
Yeah.
And you can also find me on most social media. I'm on Blue Sky, I'm on Facebook, LinkedIn.
Yeah.
You know, send me a message. I'll reply.
All right. Sweet. And then I think we'll probably talk more about this in the future or try to drum up that grassroots thing.
Definitely.
Yeah.
It's been fantastic.
No,
Thank you so
sure.
much.
Thank you. First handshake. Thank you.
Oh,
all right.
there you go.
No, sweet. Done. Wrap.